Well, hello. Well, hello, everyone. Today we're back outside again, and that is because you guessed it, kiddo's asleep, and we're trying not to wake him up. Besides, it's a beautiful evening out here, and we don't get that much nice weather. It's usually either scalding hot or bitterly cold, so I'm enjoying the nice weather while we can, and the birds give some nice ambiance. So today, we're going to be talking about 10 self-published fantasy novels that I'd like to read in the not too distant future. And I'm going to apologize because I've realized now that at least one of these may be independently published rather than self-published, but we're keeping it on here, if for no other reason than just the publicity of me talking about it. When I started this year with some of my reading goals, one of them is I said I want to read a classic every month because there's definitely some gaps in my classic reading that I'd like to make up for, and I'd like to read one self-published fantasy novel or sci-fi novel each month. And the classic challenge has very much gone off the tracks, but we've made up for it by most months reading even up to 2 or 3 independently or self-published fantasy novels. And that's been an interesting experience for me. Not all of them are 5 stars. Many of them go in one ear and out the other. But some of them have been really special, and I'm actually reading one right now that's been exceptional, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. But just to say, one of the things about me just as a reader, and I'll say this briefly and then we'll get to the list, is I get very bored reading the same thing from the same author over and over again. That's one of the reasons why I tapped out of the Wheel of Time after 6 books, is I felt like I wasn't getting anything new or exciting or interesting, and was just kind of being the same things recycled book after book. So if you have an author like Gene Wolfe who does something new or interesting in each book, or even Jim Butcher varies it up enough, even though that series isn't, his Dresden books aren't my favorite, he still does it enough that I like those books much more than, say, Wheel of Time, so I'm picking on that. Self-published fantasy books, though, is, I think, a great market for that as an opportunity, people to do something different, something out of the box. So take Sword of Kaigen. It does things even with the structure that you would never get away with in a traditionally published novel. So we're going to be talking about 10 today, and to do the booktuber thing, you won't believe what number 10 is. Number 10, to tease you out a little bit, actually it's number 1. You won't believe what number 1 is. Number 1 is a recommendation from Steve Donahue. Now, I'm going to go on a small digression here. I don't know why Steve Donahue isn't more recognized on especially Fantasy BookTube. He's read more fantasy than literally anyone else here on the platform, but because he doesn't primarily market himself as that, I guess he's not as famous in these circles. I know some people know who he is, but absolutely a treasure trove of insight into reading and literature that's there on his channel. Plus, just a darn entertaining guy to watch, with one exception, and that is his blasphemous anti-Stratfordian beliefs about Billy Shakespeare. But we'll forgive him for that because of his excellent book recommendations. I kid, Steve. So that's number 1 on the list. So I'm going to kind of tease everyone with that, because hopefully, I don't think this one's well known at all, so hopefully people won't be disappointed. With no further ado, number 10, going from 10 to 1, is going to be Phased by Tori Tekken. And this is funny, so Phased is her werewolf novel that I believe is about 2 sister werewolves in high school. And this would not have been on the list a few months ago. But here's the deal. When I started this year, the first book that I read on this journey was The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken. And I liked it. It reminded me a lot of the Dothraki parts of A Game of Thrones, the first book, and also parts of A Shadow in Summer by Daniel Abraham. So I enjoyed it and thought it was good, and it actually has stuck with me a lot longer than many of the other self-published fantasy books that I've read. But Tori was kind enough to send me an advanced reader copy of her new Western fantasy novel, Cold Silver for Souls. And I am roughly 2/3 of the way through it. I've been reading it very slowly, but it's excellent. It's very good. That's what I was alluding to a minute ago. I plan on giving a lot more thoughts on this in the future, but needless to say, anything Tori writes after this is definitely on my to-read list. I am very interested to check out even an older book of hers like Phased, because The Bloodstones was good. Cold Silver for Souls is excellent. So, the book she wrote before Bloodstones Faced is going to be on the list here. Number 9 is going to be Mushroom Blues by Adrian Gibson. And I swear Adrian Gibson must be a pen name where you're combining two of the names of two of the most famous science fiction authors with Adrian Tchaikovsky and William Gibson. But Mushroom Blues tied for the winner of SPFBO 10. But even before then, it had been getting a lot of hype. Nicholas Eames blurbed it. So, in terms of the books of the competition, it was, my understanding, pretty easily the most famous. And it's, he calls it fungal punk, which is sort of like mushroom-based noir cyberpunk novel that I've been told has a lot of influence from, say, like True Detective. And I love season 1 of True Detective. At least I love a lot about it. And I love, like, old-school noir crime books. And so fantasy versions of that, whether it's Alternate Routes by Tim Powers or even Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, like, that's my stuff. So this is on the list. I don't know when I'll get to it, but I am very interested in this. And Adrian Gibson has one of the best covers to any self-published fantasy novel I've seen maybe ever. Number 8 is going to be Our Lady of the Artoex by Andrew Gillsmith. So Andrew Gillsmith is, I believe, one of the founders of Incense Punk magazine. And Incense Punk, as sort of a subgenre, is a movement that started in recent years. That's sort of the idea of there's a lot of science fiction that's put forward by atheists that just has religion surgically cut out of it. Or if they do have religion, like in Warhammer 40k, or even in Dune, it's just for very cynical, manipulative reasons. And so the Incense Punk writers basically say, this is something that has existed for tens of thousands of years, and will continue to exist for tens of thousands of years. So let's not arbitrarily remove it. Let's explore what it would look like in the future. Our Lady of the Artoex, I believe, is about a Catholic monk in a far future version of Earth encountering an android that has become demonically possessed. Which, I just read Nightside the Long Sun by Gene Wolfe a couple months ago. This is my bread and butter. This is my thing. I could not be more interested in a premise than if you told me that. So this is the one that I think might be getting republished with a smaller indie press. So, sorry Andrew if this doesn't technically count as self-published, but we're including it on the list nonetheless. Number 7 is going to be Bound by Blood by Sean Brink. Now, Sean, here's the problem with naming a book Bound by Blood, and I want you all to do this if you're interested. Go to Goodreads, and without putting in the author's name, just look up books called Bound by Blood, and you will get a vast array of erotic fantasy novels of a different type. Many of which have a certain bent based on that title. So, yeah, it took a second to find it, Sean, but we got it on Goodreads here. This is, I believe, a faith-themed horror novel that has, like, a demonic cult fighting with, like, a church over territory. I don't know much about it, but Sean, once again, reached out to me, asked if I would be interested in an advanced reader, or just in an arc of it. Which I said yes, and so it's on the list here. Sounds interesting. I'm not the biggest horror reader, but I do dabble. Sorry, we got bugs out, but it's what you get with the nice weather. I do dabble every once in a while. So Sean seems like he's got some interesting things at play in this book. There's some other reviewers that I like who have been interested in it as well. So it's been on my radar at the very least, so hope to get to it. Number 6, we actually get show and tell today, boys and girls, is Hills of Heather and Bone by K.E. Andrews. So this wasn't on my radar at all. Based on the cover, you wouldn't think that this would be the type of book I would normally like. But my very good friend, Zachary Shea, when we did our video on the 10 underrated sci-fi and fantasy novels, this was one of them. I believe this was also a finalist in SPFBO, maybe 9 or 8. But he very much vouched for this book, it being sort of like, he said it was often pitched as like a cozy fantasy in a grimdark setting. Okay, and I get you're using the marketing buzzwords, but still interesting that it centered like a very mature relationship between a married couple. rather than young love, puppy love, anything like that. And this book is reasonably short, and my understanding is that it's a standalone. So, interested in reading this for sure. Number 5 is going to be A Drowned Kingdom by P.L. Stewart. So a lot of people, I heard of P.L. Stewart from the BookTube coverage. I think Philip Chase was the first person I heard talk about these books. And so it's been on my radar. I know he's playing with the Atlantean myth, which is interesting to me. I love Atlantis as a mythological backdrop. You know, Stephen Lawhead uses that in the Pendragon cycle, and I love that about the series. So this is of interest to me. And what piqued my interest even more, even though I haven't read her books either, I was listening to an interview with Janny Wurtz, and she was asked, who are modern-day fantasy authors that still impress you or that inspire you to write more? And she said it's tricky because when you've been reading as long as I have, you've seen a lot of the tricks that are in the bag. So you're harder to impress, and rightly so. But she said the Drowned Kingdom books by P.L. Stewart are some of the best stuff being written today. How he takes, it's I believe told in a first-person point of view from the main character, who is a very unlikable person, somebody that you don't want to root for, but P.L. Stewart, forgive me, keeps grounding him and making him sympathetic and making you root for him in different ways. So I don't know what this is, but I've heard it's very stylized. Once again, Zachary Shea asked me if I wanted to read it as part of a read-along, so I'm at least going to read the first book of A Drowned Kingdom. So I'm very interested in this series, and hopefully it works for me. I know P.L. Stewart also plays a lot with ideas and questions of faith in this book, and once again, that's my bread and butter. You know, I love reading that, love exploring it, love questioning it, love really just taking apart the topic of faith and belief structures from all sorts of different angles. So if that's a big thing that P.L. Stewart is playing with here, sign me up for it. Number 4 is going to be The Black Crown by John Douglas. So this one is on my radar just because of like what a great guy for the indie community John Douglas seems to be. Once again, I don't know this guy personally. Most of the people I'm talking about here, I don't know. I know there's, in the self-published fantasy space, there's a lot of crossover between knowing the author and then also the reviewers. I'm looking at my list here, and besides very brief interactions, there's only one of these authors that I would say I actually like friendly with or friends with. And we'll get to him in a minute. But John Douglas seems like a great guy. He shouts out a lot of indie self-published fantasy authors, helps them out a lot on his social media. So I'm interested in that. And this book, The Black Crown, looks like it's very like D&D inspired, a half-orc reclaiming his throne. Looks like a great adventure. So I'm really interested in this a lot. It's got a great cover as well. That's a big like must-have for self-published fantasy novels, is like a great cover, and John Douglas has it, so this one is on the list as well. I don't know when there's a sequel to this coming out, but I've heard basically only good things about this, and a lot of the negative buzz around John Douglas seems to be just people who dislike him for personal beliefs or for other just trolling reasons. So interested in this, it's on the list. Number 3 is going to be Wistful Ascending by the lovely Joe Byrne, JCM Byrne. So I guess I should correct it. JCM Byrne is another author that I would say I'm friendly with. Actually, I can say more than that, because JCM Byrne, begone bug, when he signed this book to me, which he graciously sent to me, signed it, your friend, JCM Byrne. So Joe, I guess I get to call you a friend now, which is great. I love having more friends. Joe Byrne and I got into a discussion about like a very, very brief exchange, once again on X, about sort of the meaning of life, where you derive meaning, where you derive a sense of purpose, where that comes from. And he reached out to me and dunked on me and said, you don't know anything about what you're talking about? I have college degrees on this, don't you know? And I wrote a series that dismantles your entire argument. He said nothing of the sort. He was very kind, and we talked back and forth, and he said, actually, sort of my perspective on this is something that I explore in the Hybrid Helix books. If you're interested, I'd love to send you the first one. I'd heard of these books, you know, they've gotten some coverage on certain corners of BookTube. My understanding is that it's like superhero sci-fi. So I've been told like superheroes punching spaceships. Which, like, the little boy inside of me just like squealed and did a backflip based on that pitch. So, and then Joe said that the philosophy is sort of on the outskirts of the story. So, Joe, I'm excited to read this. You're a great guy. Thanks for sending this to me. And once again, banger cover. So that's why it's so high up on the list. Number 2 is going to be Deathless Beast by the lovely Andrew D. Meredith. So this has sort of been the year of Meredith in terms of self-published authors that I've been reading. I think I've gone through 3 books of his, and the collation books are another 4 that I hope to at least start the series with. So Deathless Beast, I actually prefer the new cover, but these old covers have a distinct dark fantasy vibe to them as well. Start Andrew's main series that he writes. My understanding is that it deals, once again, with questions of faith, questions of belief, but that Meredith also does a lot of heavy fantasy world building in this. Especially the pitch about the paladin, main character in this series, sounds very interesting. So Andrew is the other one that I mentioned that I do consider to be a friend. Seems like a great guy, and so I'm interested in reading more of his stuff. So Deathless Beast is one of the ones I am more likely to get to sooner rather than later. Some of the ones lower on here I'm like interested, might be a few months. This one I hope to get to. I mean, as of the time of recording this video, I haven't read it yet. By the time it actually is released, hopefully I've at least picked it up, if nothing else. So that's why it's here. But number 1 on this list, which was recommended by Steve Donahue, I don't know if we can trust his opinion, but the lovely Jared Henderson, with his many philosophy degrees, has also recommended this book. So, well, I guess we can trust Steve then if Jared says it's all right. And that is the book Cubifruit by Alexander Sarando. I don't know much about this. My understanding is that it is marketed as a thriller novel, except that this has no reviews on Goodreads, almost no reviews on Amazon, and Steve Donahue said it was one of the best books he read last year. And I take his opinion on these things seriously just because of how much reading he does and his high standards for reading. And he's talked about before that, like, actually you can't judge self-published books by a different standard. You're doing them a disservice. You're treating them with kid gloves, and that's not fair to them. So with how highly he's praised Cubifruit, it went on the list. It shot to the top of the list of things I'm interested in. When somebody has a book that they're just really passionate about, this is how I got into the Second Apocalypse books. Somebody reached out to me on a Discord, and I've mentioned him before here, and was like, this is my favorite series. I would love for you to read it. And so now I'm going through it. When people are really passionate about what they love, what they want to read, like that makes my ears perk up. So, Cubifruit is on the list for that reason. And to be perfectly honest, with all of these books we've talked about here today, that's sort of it, isn't it? I know at least a part of how difficult it can be to write a book. And so, knowing that people have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and to get them put out in a very atypical model that's not a part of the big 5 publishers model, that's to be commended. And I want to help spread the word on that and hopefully read some really darn good stories too. So this video is to shout out that, say that I'm interested in it, and is it an attempt to get more ARCs, physical and digital, sent to me?
A just question, my liege.
Absolutely it is. Not. But to Joe, who sent me this as just a reading copy, thank you so much once again. And to the people that I've mentioned here who have sent me e-arcs, God bless you guys. You're very kind. And I'll say this, there's lots of self-published fantasy books that I am interested in reading that I haven't shouted out here today. So I just picked 10, but obviously many more that I hope to get to soon. So thank you for watching, guys. Take care.